One of the most challenging instruments to compress is the human voice. That's because voices are naturally very dynamic. Mixing a vocal with other instruments without using compression will 9 times out of 10 result in lyrics being drowned out by the other instruments. Audio compression, if you don't know, is a process that evens out signal levels and makes mixing much easier. Unfortunately, slapping one compressor on usually won't work because if you set your compressor for the signal level that most of the track takes up, the loudest parts will not sound good. That's because at that point, a large amount of gain reduction kicks in and it tends to suck the quality out of the track, making it sound unnaturally crushed, which isn't a good thing, obviously. So what can you do about it? A trick to throw in your arsenal is something that big-time audio engineers have been doing for decades, which is to put multiple compressors back to back in a chain, while only shaving off a few decibels of gain reduction at a time. This method allows for smooth, transparent dynamics reduction and is known as serial compression. The goal of compression is to even out the signal while keeping it dynamic sounding, and this technique helps a lot. Serial compression works great on bass guitar, clean electric guitar, acoustic guitar, piano, really anything that has extreme dynamics. But for this video, we're going to concentrate on vocals. This vocal track is one of the most dynamic ones I've ever recorded. It goes from whispers at the beginning right here, all the way to screams over here. It's got a good 22 decibels of dynamic range, which if you consider a 6 decibel difference is equal to twice the loudness, that's a lot. To top it off, it's a part of a rock track, so it definitely needs to get pulled under control. Because this track is so dynamic, one of the first things I want to do before we get to any compression is to go in here and reduce the highest peaks. Now, to save time on this video, I'm not going to do them all, but if I were handling this track for real, I would manually go through here and do that. It's called fader riding, but in this case, I'm just going to knock down this section right here. First thing I'm going to do, widen my track. So see how the arrow changes when I get to this point? And I'm going to pull it down so it's about halfway. And then the other thing I'm going to do, which is a hidden feature of Reaper, is to hold shift and press my up arrow until my loudest peak maximizes the track range, which is, I guess, right about there. Yeah, right there is good. And my other thing is to go here to ENV and click on Volume Pre-FX and then close out of that. So now we can obviously see that this is the highest peak. So I'm going to click this, and with my mouse scroll wheel, I'm going to zoom in. If you don't have a scroll wheel, you can also press the plus button on your keyboard by default, plus and minus. Do that. And it looks like this part of the track is a climbing volume. I know for a fact it is because I've already mixed the track, and it is, trust me. So the first thing I want to do is go in here and listen to what this is.
Everything you're saying.
Okay. So actually the climb starts right about here where the breath is.
That's everything.
And it starts right here after the breath. So I'm holding shift and clicking. So I'm adding what's called envelope points. or rubber bands, some people might call it, or this portion right here is the rubber band. And I'm going to go back over here and see how it changes to a four arrow icon. I'm going to click this and drag it down so that it's about even. And I'm going to have to do a little bit more adjustment, but my goal is to get it even with the track over here. And then I'm going to add 2 more points in here and bring it down. And that looks pretty good. I would probably say this is even a little bit loud, so I'll bring that back up so it's a little bit more even. And this could, I think that actually looks pretty good. Yeah, I don't want to disturb it too much. And then this part right here, again, I'm not going to do all this, but I would bring it down for sure by doing this. And then this part needs to have its own little adjustment since it's so much louder than the other part. Okay, that looks about even. I'm going to listen to it now.
I hope it's worth it. Everything you say is like.
So I would definitely adjust that again just so it's more even with what the ear hears.
For sake, I hope it's worth it.
I reduced it too much.
I hope it's worth it.
That's okay. So next step, I already put these settings in here just to save time, but I want to explain why I made the decisions I did. For the first compressor, which is RealComp, it's the one built in the Reaper, I wanted to have a compressor that just knocked off the peaks of the track. So I have it set to a fast attack of 1 millisecond. The release is like a medium type of release. It's something that usually works good for vocals, so I'm using 300. The ratio is 12:1, so it's essentially a limiter. The knee size is 0, making it a hard knee compressor. The detector is the main input. I put the low pass to 1500 hertz and the high pass to 100 hertz so that that portion of audio doesn't affect the portion above 15 kilohertz, and the portion below 100 hertz does not affect this track. Now, more than likely, because it's a female vocalist, I'm not going to have any problems with the low end. And I believe when I recorded this, I used a high pass filter as well. So just as a precautionary method, I usually do this anyway. And then finally, the RMS size. I don't want this to be an averaging type of compressor. I want it to be a peak grabbing limiter type thing. So what I'm going to do is find my highest portion, which is about right here, this part of the track. As you can see, when I back it up, you can see that that's the highest portion of this little portion of track. Now, it's not the same as over here because obviously I just wrote it. But if it were, these would be much more distinguished. And actually, just for argument's sake, I do want to set this as my main portion for when I set the threshold. So I'm going to listen to this portion. My goal is I want this portion, and I said portion about 10 times now, but I want this signal when it gets hit on the threshold to sound just as dynamic and not bad as this portion of the track. So first I'm going to set it by playing it right here.
But I cannot change. But I cannot change. but I cannot change. But I cannot change.
All right.
Word that and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last time what.
That was actually pretty transparent. I'm surprised that sounded that good. Oh, if you're curious, the master track has ozone on it, which is just to bring up the volume for audio demonstration purposes. Typically, I wouldn't have this on while I'm mixing, but I don't want anything clipping my master channel and distorting when the screen capture is doing its thing. So let me play this back again. I'm not sure if I was hearing things properly or not, and I'm going to reset this to make sure I'm not hearing that either.
Word that and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one.
Okay, I'm hearing a little bit now, so I'm going to reduce it up to, or I should say I should bring it back up to -23.
That and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last.
That sounded pretty good, so I'm going to leave it at -23. And on to the next compressor. Again, my settings are different. I wanted this to compress a little bit less, but still catch those peaks. And one rule of thumb that you should follow when doing the serial compression technique is, you see my ratio for my first compressor is at 12:1. My second one is at 6:1. And then my final one is at 3:1. So we're lowering that number with each successive plugin. So my release is quicker than my last setting, just because I want a little bit more pumping action going on, if there really is any. And my attack is slower. My knee size is now a little bit more of a soft knee setting, just a tiny bit. I still want it to be hard, but not as hard as the first compressor. And then my RMS size is changed so that I'm getting a little bit of averaging in my signal, but not a ton. Oh, by the way, for all these compressors, I have my anti-aliasing or my oversampling set to 32x. So let's listen to this track again. Again, I'm setting it for the highest signal level so that it doesn't sound bad.
I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last time. Was it word to say goodbye? I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last word that and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one.
Alright, it's still transparent, so I'm going to bring it down to 35.
Word that and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last.
Alright, I'm going to stick to 34. I don't want it compressing too hard. It was just pumping a little bit too much, I think, with 35 for whatever reason.
Word that and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last.
I'll bring it up to 33, just to be on the safe side.
I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one.
And then finally, my last compressor is going to be my character compressor. And the reason is the last two compressors, or I should say the first two compressors in this chain, are limiting the peaks. And this one, I want some impact, some character. So my settings are an attack time of 10 milliseconds, a auto release. I don't think this number even matters, but I set it to 300 just to be sure. But I have it on auto release. The ratio's at 3. The knee is a little less than halfway of what I can have it to. And then finally, I have my RMS size set to 500 milliseconds. And this can be compressed harder than the other two. So let's listen to it.
All the pain I felt inside, now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just I'm not perfect, but I cannot. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last word that, and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect. Word that, and all the pain I felt inside. Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last time, was it worth everything you say is lies, just enough to make me cry? No one's perfect, make no mistakes now. Was it worth it, and all the pain I felt inside? Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last time, was it worth it? See you now by yourself. You're so cold and empty.
Now again, if I were to go through this entire track and reduce my peaks so that they're more even with the lowest portion of this audio, which is this, and then these as well.
Looking in your eyes, twisted by the lies.
Then this would sound even better. But I think for the quick job that I did, it's not too bad.
Big mistake now, no one's perfect. For your sake, I hope it's worth it. Everything you say is lies, just enough to make perfect. For your sake, I hope it's worth it. Everything you say is lies, just enough to make me cry. No one's perfect, make no mistakes now. Was it worth it, and all the pain I felt inside? Now it's time to say goodbye. I'm not perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last time, was.
Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't have it as perfect as I'd like it, but you get the idea. So what I'm going to do now is take off ozone and render this out, and I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so the top track is the original, and the bottom track is our new track. And as you can see, look at how much more even that signal is. What I've done is I've normalized the track on each of these by going to right clicking and going to item properties and then clicking this normalize button. That's just to maximize how it looks on the track. And also down here, I wanted to show you the averaging on both these meters. The original is on the left and the new one is on the right. I'm going to solo with these so that it's not too loud. But both these meters will continue to work.
See you now by yourself. You're so cold and empty. I can't see past your regrets because you won't let me. Big mistake now. No one's perfect, but I cannot change inside. Just tell me one last time, was it worth it?
So that's good. We were able to get a much higher reduction in levels, which allows us to bring the level up to a point where the levels are even, and we can bring them up loud enough where the peaks won't all of a sudden jump out of the mix. And again, we can finesse this more, but I don't want to waste any more of your time doing that. I just wanted to say, when you think about it, this serial compression trick simulates how things used to be done in the $1 Million studios in the all analog days. You know, they had the gear in their giant racks, and when they were tracking, aka recording, they were using compressors. Going into tape, you get light amounts of compression as well. And then again, when mixing from those tapes, they added even more compression. So when you record digitally, more than likely, if you're on a budget, you don't have a hardware compressor. I personally only own one hardware compressor. So there's no way that I could record with that compressor on every single track. I just don't have enough of them. But the great thing about mixing in the box is you can put 100 compressors on if your computer can handle it and not have to worry about things like noise and distortion and cost. So I hope you liked the trick. Definitely try it out. And again, if I had more time to go through and do some manual fader rides, then this would be even more even. But the serial compression trick does work. And I would also recommend it if you have hardware emulation plugins, such as FET-based compressors. Couple them with optical compressors for a classic combination. Trust me, it's going to sound good that way. Use the FET to knock off the peaks, and then use the optical compressor to add that character. You know, it's all about experimenting. Try different things, but this trick works very well. And really, that's all I have to say, other than just remember, there are no hard and fast rules. The lesson to take away from this video is to stack compressors and use small amounts of gain reduction on each of them instead of using a single compressor with a large amount of gain reduction. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com. See you in the next video.